I've never seen a diamond in the flesh. I cut my teeth on wedding rings.
Dude, that's pretty cool.
Man, that is a sad clown.
Dude, that's pretty good.
This is The Gloom, bringing you weekly interviews with F3 Omaha Packs, exploring their F3 experiences and finding those sticky elements that create the glue in the gloom.
I would just say I'm stoked. Like, my energy level being in person and just with the guests we have today, a lot of energy in the room. And our guest today, at least the things I remember, man, this guy, he started an AO. He's done several mental health related events within F3 Omaha. Has recently been instrumental in the retreat. And I know I've been impacted by several of his COTs and workouts, and just all around great guy who's opened up his office to us today. So Birdman is on the show today, and we do have Pony. A little disclaimer: if he has to jet, it's because his baby's being born, and he has agreed to name the baby the Plague if the baby's born during one of these podcasts.
I thought it was going to be Birdman.
Yeah, Birdman. If it's today, it's Birdman. But Birdman, so I think what we've tried to do is just get some of the backstory, some of the who brought you out, what enticed you into F3 and what stayed. But some of what I hope you can tell us about has just been your experience, within F3 too. So start us off just with the beginning. Who aged you and how'd you get involved?
Yeah, thanks for coming here, guys. I know I should have given Plague. We're drinking coffee. I should have given Plague the prep mug.
Yeah, the West Side guy.
Yeah, I should have made you have the cream prep mug, but instead you got the Buccaneers mug. So
that's all right.
But no, thanks for having me on.
I look a little bit more like a prep guy anyway.
Yeah,
you compare the both of us. I kind of fit the mold, and you kind of look like a West.
Yeah, although you're copying of that stash, I'll just say that way.
So I appreciate you guys having me on. Thanks for coming here. So I guess my F3 journey or my F3 story is this. Sparty is a guy that I've known for a long time. He and I went to high school together, and we've just seen each other at random places ever since then. And we were never like super close, but obviously knew each other through sports and activities and retreats and prep, and so always chatted whenever we'd run into each other. And 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago now, we were actually having an alumni event for prep before a Creighton game down at the Blatt. And I ran into Sparty, and I had just come back to prep. I had been back maybe, 4 or 5 months, something like that. And I run into Sparty, and he's like, "Hey man, how you been?" And I said, "Honestly, not great. I'm coming off one of the roughest years of my life. I was at the lowest point of my life. By that point, I kind of started the upward swing, so I was still trying to come out of it, but there were still a lot of things lingering within me." And he's like, "I've got the perfect thing for you." He's like, what are you doing tomorrow at 5:30 in the morning?" I'm like, "I'm sleeping." And he's like, "No." There's this workout group. It's called F3. It's a bunch of dudes. We meet at 5:30 every morning. And this is December, okay? And I'm like, "Sparty," I said, "first of all, I hate mornings." I said, "Secondly, I hate cold weather. And third, I haven't worked out in months." And he's like, "No, trust me. With everything that you tell me you've been through, you just got to try it. You got to try it." He goes, come Friday. He's like, "Just come once, and if you don't like it, I won't bother you about it ever again." So I'm like, okay. So I go to Golden Spike that Friday, and it's cold. We get the beatdown starts, and about halfway through the beatdown, I was like, "This is stupid. What am I doing out here? I'm never going to do this again. This is awful. I'm tired. I'm cold. I'm so out of shape. I splashed Merlot about halfway through it. I was next to Blue Suede, and Blue Suede was like chatting me up the whole time. I'm like, how can you talk and run at the same time? Like, just be quiet. So we get done with the beatdown, and again, I'm like convinced. I'm never. This was great, thanks Sparty, but I'm not doing this. And we get to the COT, and Doc Brown was the Q that day, and his COT was everything I needed to hear in that moment. And it was all about, don't worry about the past, don't worry about the future. You can't necessarily control those things. Focus on the present. And what are you grateful for now? And what gifts do you have now? And I knew right then that this was something special and that I was going to come back. And so I tell Sparty all the time, I thank him all the time, and I tell him that he changed my life. Because it has been. It's been a little over 2 years, and the difference that F3 has made in my life is very similar to the difference that it's made in a lot of guys' lives, and that it's not so much about the fitness, but it's about hanging out with good, solid men who we have differences, but yet when we have differences, we can put those aside and respect each other and love each other and motivate each other and to become better husbands and fathers and just better human beings. And I've just never been a part of anything like this in my life. And to be able to connect with other men who are going through the same things, like having kids and the stress of that, and going through job changes and you know, certain parts of life that you're not necessarily satisfied with, and you realize, like, man, I'm not alone in this. You know, talking about marriage and how hard that can be sometimes. But I will say it's made my marriage stronger. It's made my relationship with my kids stronger. I'm in the best shape I've been in since high school. So, you know, it's everything it says it does, it has done for me.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and you love to hear that. And, you know, part of what you're saying kind of resonates with me too, because I wasn't getting any male community outside of F3. And I mean, where were you at, I guess, in that aspect of your life? You know, you're talking about you're at this low point, you're coming up in the upswing, but then you're also talking about, well, after this, I'm able to connect with men and kind of grow in different aspects of my life. Did you have any of those opportunities before? Or, I mean, I guess, what has F3 done for you in those areas?
Yeah, so I've said this before to people too. It's honestly taught me what real friendship is and what it looks like. You know, Free to Lead, they go through like and I don't know off the top of my head, but like they talk about how, you know, you have your wife's friends' husbands. Yeah. You know, you have that group, and you got college buddies or high school buddies, and you know, so I certainly had that, and I have three very good friends from high school that we all kept still continue to keep in contact and hang out with each other. But honestly, this is so different. We have deep, meaningful conversations. Don't get me wrong, and I love those guys. But this gives me guys to have those conversations with and those interactions with every day if I choose to.
Yeah.
You know, it's not necessarily a happy hour here or there. I can go every single morning and know that I'm going to have a meaningful conversation.
Right.
And notice I didn't say meaningful beatdown, because there are those too, you know. But I don't show up for the workouts.
Yeah.
I show up to make those connections. So that's what it's given me. It's given me the ability to have those connections every single day.
Well, I think that's kind of a similar transition for a lot of people, right? First initial, hey, you're coming for the beatdowns, but then it just morphs into something else, something bigger. So,
yeah, Tater and I were talking this morning on a pre-run, and you mentioned like-minded men to have those conversations with. So I do a lot of talking on pre-runs, and maybe it's perceived as complaining. I don't know. I'm not on that side of it, but most of the time the response that other guys will give you when you're talking about life is either like, me too, it sucks for me too, or yeah, I've been through that and here's what helps. But rarely do I hear somebody like respond with, man, that's a you problem. Like most of the time it's really, really helpful interaction. And I think that's because we're all trying to accelerate in those areas of our lives. So we kind of skipped your name, but I think, Birdman, that comes from your occupation or your job.
So when I got in the middle of Circle, I explained that I actually used to fly airplanes. I used to fly with Cessna 152s. I had my pilot's license, and I think just the prep and the Creighton connection. Yeah. I always thought it was Big One that threw out Birdman, but Big One says it wasn't. I can't remember who said it was. I should find that out. But yeah, somebody threw out Birdman and it stuck, and I love it. I love it.
Well, so you talked about being in really good shape from F3, and you've talked a little bit about fellowship, but the faith aspect. So I want to hear how F3 has helped you grow, but I remember this COT you gave at Paradise one time, and you actually had us all take a knee and go through the daily examine, and I had never been exposed to that before. It was amazing, but it seems to me that faith has been a part of your life, but has F3 kind of helped to push things forward there, or what's been your...
Yeah, big time, because when I found F3, I was at a point in my life where my faith life kind of took a hit. And, it's been up and down ever since, really my adult life. Growing up, my mom, she's a single mom, never had a relationship with my dad, and she instilled a really strong faith in us. I grew up Catholic, I'm still Catholic, but grew up going to Mass, and a lot of times I go to daily Mass with her or my grandma. Her parents basically helped raise us. My mom worked a job with my grandpa. They ran a business out of his basement, actually, and so I grew up going over there and going to Mass with my grandma. And so as a kid, my faith was really, really strong, and then going through prep, it grew, and then at Creighton, I actually majored in theology. So really strong faith, but then you get out of kind of the everyday of it, and you get married and have a family, and there's all these distractions in life, and so I just kind of grew away from that, and I think that's ultimately what led me down this kind of dark path that I was telling Sparty about, that had transpired a couple years before. And but finding F3 or coming to F3, it's made that solid again. The chance to pray with guys every day, to have these conversations. I was at a point in my life when I joined F3 where I had done some things that I was not proud of, and I felt like God hadn't forgiven me, and that God didn't love me. And FDIC, guys like that were instrumental for me in helping me realize, like, you're more than your mistakes. God has already forgiven you. God forgave you a long time ago. God forgave you. God knew you were going to do the things you did, and He forgave you the second it happened. And so guys like FDIC and you, and having those conversations with you, and so many other guys in the group that have helped me realize, like I said, I'm more than my mistakes, and God forgives and God loves, and that in order to sort of maintain that and not forget about it, I've got to make it more of a habit to put it in practice. So having the ability to pray at the end of beatdowns, and I experience God through others. Like, I believe that God works through other people, and God certainly works through the men that I interact with in F3. And so anytime I'm at F3 and I experience other people, I'm experiencing God. And so that's just been a huge blessing for me to be a part of. And again, I don't go every day, but on the days that I go, it's nice to have that. and to be able to feel that love and that connection.
Well, I think that's a common feeling, right? I feel the same way. Anytime I guess I feel most spiritually woke, or the best I feel in my relationship with God is when I'm spending intimate time with Him constantly. And F3 kind of gives us this opportunity to do that, where you're being exposed in this faith aspect. Maybe we could do a better job in certain areas, sure. But, I mean, just being able to close out in COT, I'm very much like you. As long as I'm witnessing it or hearing it, it brings me that much closer and gives me that much more level of exposure. I feel more confident with where I'm at with my relationship with Him. The longer I go without that, say I'm missing a Bible study with my GC, or I'm missing church, then the more strained that gets and the weaker I feel. So I think that's a common feeling that you're kind of expressing right now, and I'm glad that F3 kind of provides this opportunity for all of us to at least pick back up wherever we may be.
Yeah, big time. And I think that was the COTs, the Truth Nugget Thursdays that we started at the Berm, Q Source. It's conversations like that were really the catalyst for this impact retreat that we did.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't able to attend, so maybe you could kind of talk about the impact retreat and, your overall goal and I guess what came of it. And
we'll start. So before we get to the impact retreat, because I do want to get there, but I think, so you come into F3 initially skeptical. I'm not coming back. It's too cold. It's too early. Then you get hooked. Tell me about the internal kind of, what prompted you to then, go to a park and do burpees until the Nantan agreed to open a site. Because I think, that's one of my favorite, how did this AO start story. And then just your leadership there. Because I think there's a lot of tie-ins with kind of your motto at the Berm there too that I'd like to hear about.
Well, what prompted me to do it is I was sick of driving 20 minutes to an AO on a Tuesday or Thursday.
Fair enough. Yeah.
I mean, if I'm being totally honest, that's
yeah.
No. There was a contingency. There was a group of men that I knew were coming from the Northwest Omaha area, and I just felt like there was a place for it there.
Yeah.
And it certainly was never my intent to be the Site-Q. I just wanted an AO out there.
Yeah.
And so I kind of started hammering Tater about it. And I know Sparty had talked to him about it before, and a couple other guys had mentioned it to Tater about that we needed a Northwest AO. And, so the idea was being tossed around, and I'm like, okay, we got to make this happen. And so I went, big one was out kind of looking at places, and so I don't know, I just put this goofy video together, and I said, okay, I'm gonna stay here and do burpees, Tater, until you agree to put an AO here, and he did. I think I only stayed there like 5 minutes though. So.
Yeah. Cinematography, right?
Yeah, exactly. So the AO was started, and they asked me to be the Site-Q, and I was kind of floored, honestly. When I started F3 and I talked about this, I was at a real low point, and I was at a place where I felt like I would never lead again, and I didn't deserve to lead ever again because of some of the things I had done. And so when they asked me to be Site-Q, I was super nervous because I'm like, there's better guys to do this. God, if only these guys knew some of the things I had done, they would never make me a Site-Q. I'm not worthy of this, all these things. And but ultimately thinking through it, I thought, well, maybe this is selfishly, maybe this is good for me, and maybe this is a good first step for me. And I remember calling Tater the night before the launch, or the first day, and I just told him, I said, I need you to know what this has done for me. It has given me the confidence that it's okay for me to lead again, and that I'm not this worthless person that I had at one point convinced myself
I was. So, that meant, that did wonders for me as a man, as a human being, to be in that leadership position. I know somebody might say, well, God, you're just a Site-Q, what's the big deal? But for me personally, it was a huge deal. So I was super honored to do that, and it was cool to see people actually show up, and and to see that AO grow, and I think it's turned into a strong AO, and now Toto's taken over and done a great job with it. So
I mean, you've got to have a sense of retribution, right? Right. You're feeling this way. I can't lead these guys, and you're right. I mean, you turned it into a successful AO. It survived to pass on to someone else, and you're kind of, those roots will always tie back to you. You were able to find a successor. I think that's all. It's a success story, I think, from Site-Q leadership. So.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that, but sites are only successful if people show up, and I think a lot of guys go through this. Like when, at least, I'll speak for myself. So as a Site-Q early on, I was like, oh God, what if only 8 guys show up, and I felt like it was a reflection on me. Or like when I would queue, anywhere for that matter, it's like, at first I'd be kind of down when only quote unquote, only 5 guys showed up. And it took me a while to realize, like, this is awesome. Who cares? It's like, the meaningful conversations you can have, and if one guy shows up, I've been at beatdowns where there were 3 guys. Mm-hmm. Some of the best beatdowns I've been to are single-digit numbers. Yeah. It's just way more intimate, and it's not a reflection on me. It's not a reflection on the site. It's not a reflection on it. But it's like, as a man, it's like hard to get that out of your head.
There is a pride component. There certainly is. I mean, you have that. You're like, shit, there's only 5 guys here. What did I do wrong? Do they not like coming to my workouts? But I like what you're saying. I mean, the key or the recipe has always been small workout groups. It's great when these sites get up to 30 guys that are posting on average. But I mean, the real recipe for success has always been small guys, because it's small guys like this, 3 of us, how our conversation can lead to some type of impact on each other.
So what took me a little bit to realize was, I don't consider the Berm a success ever because of how many guys showed up or how many guys didn't show up. I consider it a success no matter who showed up, because there are meaningful things happening. Yeah. There are people making connections. There are people having meaningful conversations. It's making a difference in people's lives. And that has very little to do with me. It's the group as a whole. So that to me is what makes every AO a success, is that, hey, if you get one guy to show up, that's a success, man.
Yeah. Well, so it's, the irony is so I remember the launch day, and I'm pretty sure that was one of the first shovel flags that Folsom got really creative and like put a shield on, or like started adding. But a lot of the kind of motto, I'll call it, behind the berm was this idea of locking shields. And so the irony there is, locking shields with like 100 guys is really hard to do, but locking shields with a small group is actually pretty easy. And so I loved watching just that launch, and then some of the conversation over the years, or over the time you were the Site-Q. I remember a time you reached out and you were kind of like, something feels off. I don't, what can we do? And then you came back to the next workout and you did this really cool workout where you had stations, but it was AMRAP and some very intentional questions to kind of just create even more relationships. And I think what's challenging is we want to measure numbers as a metric, and I think the reason we do that is because measuring relationships is really hard. There's nothing I can put in an Excel file that would tell me the relational impact that we're having, and so just by nature we say, well, let's look at the numbers. But to your point, I mean, it's all about the relationships, and I think you never know when a guy's coming in the state you were in, right? Yeah. So like, how do you know that somebody's showing up and feels, self-worth is low and self-esteem is low, and they just need one other guy to be like, I've been there and it's going to get better.
Yeah. When it first started, it was I would say we had, it was just a more quiet group of guys.
Yeah.
And I did feel like something was missing. I felt like the fellowship piece was missing a little bit within the beatdowns. And I compare it to, when I had gone to the east sites and mainly, west side and how people connected there. And I just felt like that was missing a little bit. And props to you, Plague, because you were the one that said, incorporate third F into the beatdown. And shame on me, I'd never thought about that before. I'm like, duh, yeah. And so that was, and you had said, design a beatdown where you have different stations, but you have a question at every station that people have to talk about. And I think that lifted a lot of barriers for guys. It got guys to open up a little bit more. And then that kind of turned into, I posted down in Tampa, and they did this thing, Truth Nugget Thursday, where after the beatdown they got together, whoever queued that day picked a topic, and it was just like a 10 to 15 minute discussion about the topic of the queue's choosing. And I'm like, this is incredible. Like, I have to copy this. This is so cool. And so we implemented that at the Berm, and that's where I feel like it really took off. Yeah. And again, whether there were 4 guys there or 25 guys there, to see guys stick around, like at Q-Source, to see guys stick around and sit in a circle and talk about leadership and marriage and being a dad and shame and and failure, like all these things that we can have these meaningful conversations about. And you got a guy sitting next to you that could be 30 years old, and you got a guy sitting next to you that could be 60 years old. And to get both perspectives, which are both great perspectives, and to be able to learn from each other, it's been a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I would just selfish plug to all the other Site-Qs out there. I think we would love to see that take off more. It's kind of like Q-Source may take a little more time, right? You've got the content, and you're looking at, okay, can people really afford to stick around for 30, 45 minutes after the beatdown? But the TNT by design is a little bit, it's not quite as time intensive. And I think I remember hearing from guys that participated in some of the first TNTs, and they're like, why are we doing this at all the sites? And so I think we should be doing a lot more of that. I do want to get your thoughts on, because as we're progressing here, and we'll get to the retreat, so keep listening for all of you that Pony gave the teaser. But so then from there, you've got this site, and you're leading really well, and you're getting your confidence back, and then I feel like you and I maybe connected, or maybe slow pitch, and it was like mental health for men is an issue, right? We've been there. We have different guys with different backgrounds, different things they've done, and we need to give more support to our packs in that area. And so we've got the F3 mental battle, and then you've organized some things around mental health awareness, suicide awareness. So talk me through some of those things. Has that just become a passion area for you, or?
It has, because of what I went through 3 years ago. I was in a job that was hugely stressful, and we did great work as a nonprofit. We did great work, but the job was just not for me, and I couldn't handle it. And I entered into a pretty severe depression. And honestly, before that, I had heard about the word depression and like the term mental health, and I had this opinion, like, it's so overplayed, like that can't be real. Like, yeah, I'm sure it's real for some people, but come on, and I have a lot of guilt about that, being super judgmental about that. And then all of a sudden you go through it yourself, and I wish it wouldn't have taken that, but it's like, holy crap, this is real. And then you look at the numbers, like 2019, 1.4 million suicide attempts in 2019. I don't know 2020 numbers. 48,000 deaths over 70% of those attempts were males. Over 70%. I mean, that is an outrageous statistic. And I got to a place where I felt like I was alone. Nobody would understand. Nobody would be able to forgive me. I'm at the end of my line. It's better off if I'm just not here. So I had a lot of those thoughts. And thank God he saved me. He saved me. Because there was one point, I don't want to go into extreme detail about it, but there was one point where I was really considering, like, this is it. My wife, my kids, my family, my friends, everybody's just better off if I'm not here. And I mean, I had convinced myself of that, or I believe the devil had convinced me of that. And in that moment, I got a call from my wife, or I thought it was my wife, and so I picked it up and I answered it, and it was my 4-year-old son at the time. He was 4. And he said, "Daddy," and I said, "Yeah, buddy." And he goes, "When are you coming home?" And I realized it was in that moment that was not a phone call from my 4-year-old son. That was a phone call from God saying, "I'm not done with you yet." And I also realized in that moment that as bad as I thought it was, like, even if I lost everything, I had to be there for my 2 boys. And so that's really what changed everything, and for me, and sort of started the starting point of getting me out of this. And I left that job, and months later, like I already explained, I found F3 and start talking to guys about what I had been through. And guys are sharing similar stories from what they have been through, and it's like, man, I'm not alone. You know, I'm not alone. And so that has become very, very important. Suicide prevention awareness has become incredibly important to me. Mental health has become incredibly important to me, because I was at that place where I felt like I was alone, and I want to make damn sure that I can do whatever I can where somebody who is maybe going through that knows that they're not alone, and knows that their life has purpose and they have value. And that as bad as it is, your life still means something. And it has value, you know. And so and you got to keep going. You got to keep moving. And so yeah, it's become incredibly important to me. And I think it's powerful for other guys to share their stories. And you know, mental health doesn't stop at depression. Right. You know, it's alcoholism, drug addiction, you know, all these things that affect our decision making and ability to be the best versions of ourselves. You know, it can be depression, you know, but a lot of these things have come to light, and you know, I feel like God has brought me to this point to try to help in this area where and when I can. And so September, there's Suicide Prevention Week every September, where I try to organize a run. May is Mental Health Awareness Month. Again, try to organize some sort of run. It's super informal, and guys show up if they can. And you know, just hopefully lets guys know that they're not alone. And it's also important that we remember. We remember individuals who have lost that battle. And we remember family members who have had other family members or friends who have unfortunately lost that battle. And so I just think it's important, and it's become an important piece of my life.
Yeah. Well, I certainly appreciate you sharing. I had never heard that story, so I think it's a very powerful story, and I really appreciate you sharing and opening up about it. I also commend you on, you know, kind of putting this in the forefront, taking a position of leadership, saying, hey, this is something that I value and I think is of great importance to everyone else. Here's some opportunity for you to become a little bit more knowledgeable about the situation. You know, it makes me certainly think a little bit more about the invitations to come on runs during those times. You know, just having your perspective and your story.
You know, everybody struggles, and you don't have to be diagnosed with depression to be depressed. You can have bad days, and you can be sad. And not everybody who has a bad day or is sad is going to go to necessarily those extremes, but whether you're at an extreme or just having a bad day, it's nice to know that somebody's there. Somebody's there for you, and somebody can lift you up and really pick you up. And that was sort of the catalyst behind the logo for the berm. Was if you look at the logo, there's a guy who's standing up on top of a berm, and he's a soldier, and he's got his head down. He's a sad clown. And you've got guys in front of him that will protect him at all cost. And in order to get to him, you got to go through them. And I was that guy in that position where I was the sad clown, and guys in F3, they were that shield knock for me. They protected me. They lifted me up. They built me up. And eventually that guy who's standing on that berm, he's going to go in that group of men that are protecting somebody behind him. And
I actually didn't know the history behind that logo, so that's pretty impactful.
Yeah. Well, awesome. If you listen to some of the old podcasts from like Dread and Dark Helmet, they talk about Get Right, and it's really all of the stuff in F3 content, but the Get Right, they talk about the fact that it's not a once and done. It's not a checklist where like, okay, now I'm right. It's every day I wake up and I've got to take the daily red pill, and I've got to get right. And I think for me, what I've noticed is that the sad clown syndrome, depression, it's all very similar, right? It's like a daily struggle to like, get right, stay right, and to like fight off the sad clown, because it's always kind of lurking there, at least for me. And so I've really enjoyed the runs because we get to hear other guys' stories, but also guys that show up that are just there to support, and that's been really cool. The other thing, I guess, from my perspective, at least as my journey has progressed, a lot of it boils down to identity and purpose for me. And so then when I heard about this impact retreat, I got really excited. Of course, I wasn't able to go, but I think that's kind of where you had identified this need, right? Like, guys, if I don't know who I am, then I don't know what to do. And like, how do we help guys even just entertain that conversation? But talk to us a little bit about the impact retreat, kind of what spurred that on, and how did it go?
I think really what spurred it was conversations that happened in Q-Source, and the conversations that happened on pre-runs, and conversations that happened at TNT when we started that, and this yearning for more of that. The Jesuits have this term called the Magis, which means the more, and how as human beings we should always pursue more. We always want the more, and we want the more for the greater good. And so I wanted more of that. A couple guys had made comments that they wanted more of it. Retreats, mainly as a younger man, had as a high schooler and even into college, had a profound impact on my life. Getting closer to God, developing a personal relationship with Jesus, looking to Him more as like a friend. That all happened through retreats, these super powerful conversations with small groups. And as an adult, I've led a number of retreats in my work at Prep. And I see the impact that it has on young men, similar to, I think, what it had on me. And I'm like, well, maybe there's a place for this for adults. I know that there's adult retreats out there, and you can go to Cloisters on the Platte, and you can go to other men's retreats, but I want something with F3 guys, because I feel such a strong connection with these guys already. And so I started talking to a couple guys about it, LPC and Sparty mainly. And they're like, yeah, this would be awesome. So then between the three of us, we added Grills, and so Grills kind of became, the four of us were kind of this core group. The retreat was modeled after a retreat that we do at Creighton Prep called Junior Encounter. but we modified it to fit more of an F3 theme. So it was a combination of small group talks and large group talks. And in the beginning, when we decided to do this, I was like, I don't know if anybody's going to sign up. It's kind of like one of those things when I started at AO, or when you start AOs, it's like, or when you're queuing, like, okay, who's going to show up?
Right.
And I thought, if we can get 10 guys, this would be awesome. If we could get 10 guys. And we had 34 guys sign up. 30 went on it. Unfortunately, a couple guys came down with COVID before it, and a couple guys chose to not go just because of COVID, which I totally respect. I get it. So we had 30 guys on the retreat. We had 5 small groups. So we had 5 small group leaders, and it was a combination of small group discussion and large group discussion, and we dive deep into certain topics. I mean, we talked about the topics are, why am I here? We talked about obstacles to God's love. We talked about what does it mean to be a high impact man, and we explored how does God love me. And it was really cool as one of the directors. So Sparty and I directed it. We didn't have our own small groups or anything like that. So, but to be able to kind of see what is happening from afar, or from like a behind the scenes standpoint, it was awesome to see the impact and the power that it had on the people who were there.
Yeah.
And as I talked about before, I experienced God through other people. I experienced God through these deep conversations like this. And so I really feel like on my spiritual journey, on my faith journey, that this was something selfishly that I needed too, because I don't ever want to go back to where I was. And if I don't keep doing stuff like this, then I have the tendency to forget, and I might go back to where, I hope I don't, but if I keep doing stuff like this, I'm confident that I'll never go back to where I was. So it was incredibly powerful. The group leaders did an incredible job. And I told the guys that went on the retreat, I said, you guys made this retreat what it was. Had you not been open to showing up, had you not been open to sharing, had you not been open to kind of opening up your hearts, none of this works. It wouldn't work. And so it was a really beautiful experience, and I look forward to doing it next year. And I don't know what it's going to look like next year. We'll see whether it's the same or different, or it'd be nice for me to go participate in it rather than direct it. So but we'll see what happens.
Do you feel like because I've been on some retreats before, and there's this the first maybe session or day is like let's do some icebreakers and get to know you and try to get the group to that place where they can open up. But I would imagine with F3 guys, that work's already been done, right? They kind of show up knowing, hey, we might get deep here, because we're doing that on pre-runs, and we're doing that in all these other places. But was that the experience, or?
It absolutely was.
Yeah.
And so many of the retreats I've been a part of are with high schoolers. And so it takes that time for them to get comfortable and open up, and
They gotta stop being cool.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. But the way you described it is exactly how it played out. I mean, these are guys who they're used to having these conversations, and I think a lot of them are used to having these conversations through their experience in F3. A number of guys had been on a retreat before. A large contingency of them had not. This was their first ever exposure to a retreat. But anytime you go to a Q source or a TNT, you have a retreat type experience. So I think once they got, and we kept the elements of the retreat a surprise, a lot of them. But I think once they got there and kind of saw the format, how it was going to go, it was like, okay, this is, I'm kind of used to this, The small groups, we picked them at total random. We drew them out of a hat. You know, because there was some discussion about, you know, do we put guys who know each other with each other, or do we just do it randomly?
Yeah.
And the majority, it was like everybody was like, no, we're gonna let God guide this thing, and we're gonna do this randomly.
That's cool.
And it worked out. You know, guys were with each other that had never met each other. Some guys did know each other that were in the same group, but it really worked out. I do have to share one story. So there's a part of the retreat where we're sharing about something as a large group. So we're sitting in a circle. We put chairs in a circle, and we're sitting down sharing. And the retreats I've been a part of is the guy who's sharing holds a candle, and then when he's done sharing, he'll pass the candle to the next guy, and he shares. Well, you got 30 guys sitting in a circle, and we weren't passing a candle to each other. We were passing a Kleenex box because guys were just sobbing. And I share that story as a, you know, God worked in incredible ways and moved people in incredible ways on that retreat. I've never seen a Kleenex box get passed from person to person on a retreat, and I've also never seen a group of 30 guys just sobbing like babies.
Yeah.
But it was neat, and I say that with total respect. You know, and but I'm really glad we did it, and I'm super thankful for all the support from the people who attended. And I mean, I know people were praying for us that at beat downs and things like that, and you know, I'd love for more people to be able to go however we do it next year.
Man, I commend you on doing it, because I think you're providing something that, like you're saying, more that people are yearning for. When you just go to a workout, how much can you learn from a guy in a 30-second COT, right? Then you start hitting cafeteria, you go to Q source, you're joining these discussions in Free to Lead. You leave, okay, I've got a different perspective. I've really gained a lot from that, but I do want more. And so to have a whole weekend dedicated to that and giving an opportunity for men to just be vulnerable with each other, to go over some, I mean, yeah, there's some direction that you're heading or whatever, and it's structured, which is good, but to give them that opportunity to have 30 men like you're talking about around the circle crying together, I mean, that's pretty profound and powerful stuff. So
yeah, and I think part of it too, you can see the impact that F3 has through the wives' ability to allow their spouse to go for 2. I mean, seriously, like, you know, to take time away from to wives and family, and some guys had to take off work one day, and you know, so shout out to the wives, the M's of F3 that
you know, the mistress thing, you know, I think that's just the joke, right? Like, maybe not in plague situation, but no, I mean, most wives are like, yeah, I mean, he spends a lot of time in F3, but they will always say, but he's better for it. Yeah. He's a better man than he was before he had it. So, you know, yeah, there is this love-hate with it, and I think it's mostly love, though, from the wives. But yeah, definitely respect to them for letting us kind of come out and do our thing.
My M's, plural. My M has made comments to me in the past. She's told me, she goes, I can tell the days you go and the days you don't go.
Wow.
Yeah. And I thought that was kind of incredible.
Yeah, I'll keep it brief, but I think it's just timing. And, you know, if the time at which F3 enters your life is competing with your marriage, and, you know, like at the time I started F3, I needed something that wasn't my wife. And so I think over time, it's working, you know, between the two of us to remove some of those resentments that she might have towards something that's ultimately good, but has kind of, you know, been viewed as a distraction or another addiction for me, you know. And I'll admit, you know, early on it was, some of it is just, she has this view that when I show up to an F3 workout, I get out of my car and it's like a 90s rap video, you know, everybody's like, plug, and I've tried to assure her that has never happened. If anything, it's crickets, right? Because
people, like, oh my God, he's here.
Yeah, right. So you know, just the difference, and you know, one of the things that we talked about with, I think with Sparty is, my goal this year is, can I engage my wife in the F3 Foundation event to give her a taste of that culture, so that she understands it's not like that. But I agree. I mean, you've got to have support from your M's to participate in some of this.
So when I do pre-runs, which I haven't been doing them as much, I should do more. But when I do pre-runs and you show up, the thought goes through my head like, oh crap, I'm gonna have to talk while I run.
Yeah. Well, you know, I'm working on it. I think Armbar and I might do a podcast over a run sometime. But I do. This has been great, and I think we could probably talk for hours. I think one of the things, though, that I really want to get your perspective on, what advice do you have for guys that are already in F3 as a new guy joins the group? How do we create that space that you felt? I mean, what are some of those key things that make a guy like grab on like that and then feel important, gain their confidence? I mean, are there things we can do, or is it just being consistent? What's your thoughts there? What can we be doing more of?
Yeah, picking up the 6 is huge. And I say that picking up the 6, I don't mean necessarily the guy that's new and slowest, but we got to pick up the 6 at a cafeteria.
I love that.
So maybe a guy is sitting off by himself, or
That's
he's
really
new, and engage him. Invite him over to sit with you. Talk to him while he's standing in line. You know, to me, that's picking up the 6. If there's a guy that's new that's at Q Source, and it's probably a little uncomfortable to share, you know, maybe pull him aside and say, hey, it'd be great to get your perspective on this. Maybe not today, but, you know, in the future. I think that's picking up the 6. So I think that's huge, making them feel a part of the community, which so many guys do so well. But I'm guilty of it. Like, I go to a cafeteria and I immediately gravitate toward the guys I know. Like, I'm looking for pantyhose and Chucky and Nail It, and, you know.
Right.
And I could do a better job of seeking out guys I don't know as well. And even, I would say this too, because I'm at fault for this as well. Hitting up different sites.
Yeah.
I'm never disappointed when I take the time to go to a different site. And I'm not even saying, like, I don't even necessarily think you got to go to a different site every week. You know, maybe once a month, twice a month. You say to yourself, all right, I'm going to hit up, I've never been there, or I haven't been there in a while, and I'm going to go to that one. First of all, I think you challenge yourself, because you get out of your comfort zone and your routine. Mm-hmm. And secondly, you're probably going to run into somebody that you're going to have a meaningful conversation. I know I brought that up a lot, these meaningful conversations, but I really value those, and that happens. So yeah, I think picking up the 6 and trying to explore different sites every once in a while, I think is important.
Picking up the 6, man, outside of the first step, I think my mind is blown a little bit, because I haven't heard that, and it makes total sense, though, when you say it, that's not just a first F concept.
Sure.
That's phenomenal. What about you? What encouragement do you need if guys see out there in the gloom? What types of things should we be thinking about, praying about, or asking you about? Anything there?
Boy, I wasn't expecting that question.
That's a Pony Express question right there. Yeah, I can't believe he let me ask it.
That's okay.
You know, I need a reminder to go. I talk to Nailed It a lot. Nailed It's like, you going tomorrow? And I'm like, hey, shoot me a text tonight and tell me to go. You know, so that's what I need, the accountability.
Yeah.
A lot of times I show up just because I know I told the guy that I was going to be there.
Right.
And a lot of times I skip because I didn't tell anybody I was going to be there.
Right.
Yeah.
So the accountability, keep me accountable. I would say that's what I need.
Love that. Love it. Well, again, this has been great. You opened up your office and your mind and your heart, and I think we'll take us out to Name-A-Rama.
Yeah.
Sound good. All right, Brandon Fleehardy, 36, The Plague.
Plague.
We can do.
Well, actually, we'll do Knuckles this time.
All right.
I'm John Whitworth, 30, Pony Express.
Nice. Brad Burke's 40, Birdman.
Birdman. All right. Nice job, fellas.
Thanks, guys.
Oh, that was phenomenal.
That was awesome.